This is a quick review of the definition of a complex number. A complex number is a sum or difference of a real number and imaginary number. So every complex number, and this is what I have listed here, this is called the standard form. And typically how you will see a complex number. It has a part that's real, like 7 or 1/2 or 14, whatever it is. This is the real part, and you'll also have the sum or difference of an imaginary part. So maybe it's 12i or minus 4i or whatever it is. You'll have a real part and an imaginary part. And you're actually just going to add them just like you would, like you're gathering like terms. You will combine their real parts and you will combine their imaginary parts. So if I asked you to sum the complex numbers 2 plus 3i and 7 minus 6i, this would be 2 plus 7 over here, and we would also have plus 3i minus 6i, which we can see is just 9 minus 3i. And that's it. I wouldn't ask you to factor that. I would actually be okay with you leaving it like that because we want to have the real part and the complex, or excuse me, the real part and the imaginary part separate. But if I were to factor a 3 out of there, then we would have factors, and we really don't want the multiplication there. In order to add these two, and these two are actually complex numbers, we need to first change it into the standard form, which is what I have up here, the a plus bi. So we need to change it into the standard form of a complex number. So this would be 1 plus 2i plus 4 minus, and the square root of negative 16 is 4i. So this would be, let's see, 1 plus 4 is 5. And we have 2i minus 4i. So that's actually going to be a minus 2i. 5 minus 2i. This is how you add and subtract complex numbers. To multiply complex numbers, we will get a complex number as long as they're not conjugates. And we can see here that they're not conjugates because it's not the same terms with differing signs. We just have a 2 minus 6i times 5 plus 3i. And what we're going to do is just FOIL this out. So I'll distribute the 2 to both those terms, and then I'll distribute the minus 6i to both those terms. So when I distribute the 2, I'll get 10 plus 6i. And then when I distribute the minus 6i, I'll get minus 30i and minus 18i squared. So on the next step, I'm just going to combine what I can combine, and that's the 10 stays the same. But plus 6i minus 30i will be a minus 24i. Minus 18i squared. Well, we can never have an I raised to a power in your answer, ever. But we know I squared is just negative 1. So this will become 10 minus 24i plus 18. We can combine the 10 and the 18. This will be 28 minus 24i. When you multiply two complex numbers, you will get a complex number. This problem is set up to divide two complex numbers. This is a ratio of complex numbers, one in the numerator, one in the denominator. But one of the neat things about this is we could actually simplify this ratio of complex numbers to one complex number. And we're not going to do it by using long division or any division techniques, but we're going to use the strategy that we used in the last or a previous section, where we, instead of dividing out, if we could just change the denominator to be a rational number, then we can split it apart if we need it to be. We can write it as one thing, one rational expression, or in this case, one complex number. So we did that by multiplying by the conjugate of the denominator, and that's what we're going to do here. And the conjugate of the denominator is 1 minus 4i. And conjugates in complex numbers will look like this. If you have an a plus bi, the conjugate of that is a minus bi. And you have to be careful here because it needs to have the complex, or not the complex, but the imaginary part needs to have differing signs. So the plus bi and the minus bi is what really makes it work. So when you do that, if we were to FOIL out the top, we get 7 minus 28i minus 2i plus 8i squared. That's what happens when you multiply or FOIL out the top. Down below, we'll get 1 minus 4i plus 4i minus 16i squared. Now I'm going to simplify the numerator. I can combine the i's, so I'll get 7. This will be a minus 30i plus 8, and I squared we know is a minus 1. Down below, I'll get a 1 minus 16 times negative 1. The reason why, minus 4i plus 4i cancel, and I squared becomes negative 1. So up top, I'll have 7 plus, this will actually turn to a minus 8. So 7 minus 8 will be a minus 1 minus 30i. And down below, I'll have a minus, or excuse me, a 1 minus negative 16. So that will actually turn into a 17. 1, this will turn to a plus 16, so it'll be 1 over 17. Now, this is actually not done yet. What we need to do is, you know, when you divide two complex numbers, you will get a complex number. It's important that we separate these two, that we write this as a minus 1 over 17 minus 30 over 17i. We want to split it apart so there is a real part, which in this case, the real part is the negative 1 over 17, and an imaginary part, which is 30 over 17i. So we do need to break it apart, and if anything would simplify, we'd want to do that as well.